Looks like we are live. And also, I'm going to see here, hopefully, in a second, that this is our first flight lab where we are actually broadcasting to multiple sources. So we use the power of Restream to basically put this out to YouTube, to LinkedIn, and also to Twitch. So if you'd like to join, you can either join on your favorite streaming platform or you can go to Hublio, which is part of the event details on LinkedIn, to participate as well in the chat and the poll that we have going on here. So, with that, welcome everyone to another Flight Lab series. Basically, what we're going to be doing today is really going through the Copilot Agent Showcase and just kind of highlighting like where we've gone or where we've gotten to basically as part of this adventure that we've been tackling when it comes to Copilot enablement in the Microsoft stack. So I'm proud to be here to be able to present. My name is Scott Frappier. I've been in the industry now for many, many years, almost about 24 years at this point. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to kind of sharing this detail with you, as well as having a special guest I'm going to hold off on introducing. But I'm going to tell you, we've got some amazing experts at Stone Ridge that are focusing on AI enablement inside of business processes. And we're creating things pretty constantly here now to be able to address those particular needs. So it's a really exciting time. We've been able to really crack basically the code on how to build these particular agents to actually be effective inside of a business. And yeah, it's just been a lot of fun to see that grow. So with that, let's go ahead and just do a quick introduction here, because what I want to do is really just frame what we're going to be talking about today, which is really around Copilot agents. As many of you know, we had this huge influx about 2 years ago now where we had really these capabilities added into AI through large language models that allows us to take patterns and then generate content really quickly and easily. And that's a really summarized way to say it, but that's the reality that we see, obviously, with these large language models. And one of the things that's really interesting is the fact that agents have really matured on the Microsoft platform to be able to do things that we typically do as human beings in a digital space, such as, adding rows to Excel, or going into Dynamics and creating records, or interacting with chat to give you, some of the directionality in terms of knowledge that you may need to be able to answer something, or even to draft an email really quickly. Just quite candidly, I use it all the time for some of those basic tasks that absolutely increase efficiency and can quite profoundly increase efficiency if you know how to use them. But one of the things to note here is that when we start talking about agents and why they're so important, really we need to talk through what the goal is here. Because from a business point of view, if we think about what we tackle inside of the flight lab as an example, we want agents to be able to provide scale. We want them to be able to provide quick automation so that you can create, for example, different types of process enablement without doing code and using, for example, natural language to instruct the agent what to do. We want to be able to assist an end user with their tasks, because one of the misconceptions typically when it comes to these agents is that they are very smart, and quite candidly they're not very smart. They're very powerful if you know how to use them, like any tool inside of the digital space, such as Excel or Word or whatever it may be, but you have to know how to use that. And so the assistive perspective here is really important. And one of the things that are really, really critical here is the fact that the patterning that you're using now is absolutely the patterning that you'll be using with large language models as they improve. An example would be 4 years ago, we had 4, then we had GPT-4 Omni, then we had GPT-4.1, and now we have GPT-5. And with each of these different types of what they call transformer architectures has increased in terms of the capabilities. Just as an example, at a really high level, with GPT-4, we could accurately detect patterns in about 64,000 characters of data. Now we're up to about 1.5 million characters with around a 97% recall rate on that, which is absolutely incredible and obviously impacts them business systems in the future here as well. So learning how to understand these use cases for agents for your business is really going to be critical over time. But the one thing to note here, and this is really important, this is why we're doing this session today, is that for our agents, you need to understand that they can't do everything. That is just a matter of fact. more importantly, when we look at large language models, they are fantastic at identifying a pattern in natural language and then basically generating content. And generating content can be logic-based content, meaning identify the pattern inside of here and then output a 1, 2, or a 3. Typically, I would say not as much around numbers, but around different paths. Like, does this escalate to customer service? Does this go to finance? Does this go to, for example, manufacturing, right? If you're having an agent monitor some type of support inbox as an example, but they're not really good at what a lot of leaders want it to be. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of leaders I talk with are like, I want an AI agent that's going to analyze and come out basically with suggestions on what I can do to optimize my manufacturing operation. It's like, well, you can automate the reporting of it, for example, or the scaffolding of it to get the output that's needed. But we're not at this phase of what we call AGI, or artificial general intelligence, where an AI-based system can do the same as a human being. And just candidly, when you hear about like some of the breakthroughs that AI systems have done, well, that's because the researchers or the people that are using them have built this scaffolding to identify a pattern, and they iterate on that pattern with a large language model, which is, once again, pattern recognition and matching that makes these very powerful. So one of the things to note that you've heard on the Flight Lab as well is that AI is a 6-year-old. Provide the right scaffolding, and you can get tremendous results of it as you go through that. So with that, what I want to do is just identify, for example, what it does great, and then also then let's go through and then share and look at some of these different types of copilots that we have. So obviously finding patterns in data like we've talked about is a really great thing. We can analyze text and pull out aspects that are inside of a prompt that we basically create for that natural language integration. We can generate communication really quickly then from email or text or voice based upon that content. So if you think about it, you back up just a second, you can now start basically using agents where business users don't need to log into the system like Dynamics to then do something as part of that particular transaction. Instead, they can basically go in and use Outlook, or they can go to a Teams chat to interact with it to get to those results. And this is a really profound change because it really abstracts then the end user from where they're doing their work. Most of us love to delegate. Most of us love to basically go through and then send an email to say, this is what we want to accomplish. You're not like, the abnormality is me, where I love to log into the business system, right? So once again, understanding what these do and how they're trained really drives some of these processes forward. So let's go ahead and talk about these agents, because one of the things that Microsoft is really tackling right now is that 2026 is going to be a massive agent rally that we're going to start seeing. And we've got a bunch of agents that have been added as base agents inside of Dynamics 365, for example, that you can harness if you have, for example, Business Central, or you have Dynamics 365 Sales, or even the finance and operations or finance and supply chain management solution. So as an example, one of the finance capabilities here is this reconciliation agent that you can use that will actually go through and look at the general ledger and basically tie out AP, AR, tax ledger, and basically then give you suggestions as to, well, what are the issues with those particular transactions, for example? And this is a really profound concept, because now what's happening is that we're using agents to basically do what a person would do. And how would a person do it? Well, at the end of the month, you'd run your aging for AP or AR as an example. You'd look at the balance on the general ledger inside of that account as of that end of day. And then from there, you would tie those ledgers. And it, in terms of a process, it could be 15 minutes because you got to generate that report. And if you scale that to multiple legal entities, for some companies, especially enterprise companies, it could be a couple hours of time. Now, mind you, it's monthly, but once again, if we're saving 20 hours of time in scale, and this is where automated agents are very powerful, you can see the return on investment when it comes to then this AI enablement. And that's what we're seeing more and more, is that when people identify repeatable processes that have a time-based impact with low complexity, these agents are very good at automating those and then generating content and even then doing exception processing with it as they go through that process. So once again, you can see here as an example, everything matched in terms of those different types of transactions, but our tax ledger did not because it was outstanding in terms of the dollar amount that was related to it. So this is an example then of using an agent to basically tackle a business system requirement. And there's even more than this too. An example inside of the supply chain management solution is that there's a supplier communication agent that will basically go through and identify different types of follow-up activities that are required for purchase orders when they've been basically not received or they're received late as an example. And what you can do is you can configure the system to go ahead and when they meet a specific type of criteria that it'll draft an email and follow up then on that delayed purchase order so that the purchasing team can be more proactive in their responses. This from a distribution perspective, if you think about it, can have a profound effect because even a day of not stocking inventory could, in some industries, impact it by tens of thousands of dollars in terms of lost profitability potentially as part of it. Or even worse, project-based work. If you don't have the material that's needed for that phase, for that date that's established, that could have a substantial downstream effect then on that particular job or project that you're interacting with. So these agents take a lot of what we do as people or we task with people and allow us basically to go through some of those different types of automated processes. And once again, it doesn't stop at just finance. Business Central, as an example, has a sales order agent that you can basically have your customers go through and then email. And then from there, it'll provide quotation. It'll create orders or quotes that are related then to the product inquiry that is there. So it's a really powerful capability. And we're going to talk a little bit more on what you can go even further with then as part of, for example, a custom agent that you could build as well. We have, for example, the sales qualification agent now that runs, where we can go through and identify, for example, different types of opportunities in the CRM-based system, like Dynamics 365 Sales, that'll actually go through and then based upon the prompting and rules that you define for it, identify where in the process is that particular opportunity. So if you have like an market qualified lead or MQL status, or you've got different statuses that are related to these opportunities and leads, you can use this qualification agent to identify then the opportunities that are going to be the best to spend your time as a salesperson around. And then there's also things like researcher agents as well that do that, right? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just flip just really quickly here into Copilot Studio to start this conversation, because one of the things that's really profound about these agents is the fact that while we're getting a bunch of them that we have inside of the Dynamics product line and inside of M365 as well, the ability to create has the biggest impact in your business. And more specifically, when we think about agents, the gold isn't as much around, for example, the business system on the back end. It's the process that the agent tackles. It's the pathing that it uses to basically get to the conclusion that you need inside of your business. And one of the thought processes that leaders are starting to think through is the fact that an agent is kind of agnostic to the business system. It's almost like what we look at SQL Server is to Dynamics. It's needed. It's a necessity to store and structure data in tables, to have columns, to have indexes, to be able to access the data very quickly. But it really is abstracted now. We don't talk as much about SQL Server when we implement Dynamics 365 because that's the back-end system that records it. Now, there's technicalities always, right? There's always that gray. But in terms of like where we were 10, 20 years ago, like when I started, where SQL Server performance tuning, index hinting, all that type of stuff was part of large-scale implementations, it's very, very rare to go to that depth and level anymore because that's abstracted. So what happens when an agent can actually basically tackle a business process, and then from there, it saves the data in whatever business system you have? Meaning You could have a competitive ERP product. You could have a Microsoft product. You could have multiple products, for example, that then an agent goes through and then gets the information to present back to a user. And so the agents are really where the gold is when you think about a leader and what you want to basically extend, because the business system becomes basically what SQL Server is to the business system. It stores the data in a structure that is then used by the agent to then interact with it. And then the person interacts basically with the agent. This is where Satya's statement comes really clear. Copilot is the user interface or UI for artificial intelligence or AI. So Copilot is the UI for AI. That's why this is so profound. So let's look at just a couple of examples here. And let's start, for example, on a really basic one. So a basic one would be an HR policy guide agent that you create really quickly. And I did this actually inside of a training class live with people in about an hour, where we added, for example, this particular agent, this policy guide agent that we deployed inside of our organization. It referenced, for example, some Gartner resources on human resources, and also then referenced, for example, the team member handbook at Stoneridge Software. So the cool thing about this is if I look at this particular agent, I can actually take this and then deploy this to different types of endpoints that I can interact with. So in this example, what I can do is I can use my HR policy guide agent that I deployed inside of Copilot Studio to ask questions like, hello, to start, as an example, to get a greeting if we want to, and see that chat then interact with it. And you can see I made this agent really cool, right? Because HR is always really cool. And I can say, for example, what is my maximum FMLA leave for Stoneridge, right? So I can ask a question of the data. And what's really amazing about this is that instead of actually going through and basically making it where I've got to do all this complex coding and logic, I added a topic and I added that resource of that knowledge base. And I actually also added, for example, different types of leave type that's inside of here. And what I can do is when I actually interact with, for example, those different leave types, I can hone in basically what information I would use to be able to go through and then generate the content that's related to it. So you can see here as an example, the maximum FMLA leave for family related reasons at Stoneridge, because I put family inside of here, is 26 weeks of leave during a single 12-month time period, right? So as you can see here as well, it's referencing then that particular knowledge source in here. And the reason I highlight this is because this is typically your basic entrance when it comes to agents. Agents that can quickly get information for you, HR agents, sales support agents. As an example, Tracy, one of our team members, created an agent that goes through, for example, our different types of offerings that we have for Copilot that a salesperson or an existing customer support agent internally at Stoneridge can use to ask questions live about the different types of offerings and capabilities that we provide as a team around that. So obviously, could we do that the old-fashioned way by basically having a one-pager? Well, we do have that, and we do that. But being able to interact quickly to get information, to build content around it, and to update it to basically adapt, for example, to different questions that customers may have, makes these agents more powerful. They're directionally a fantastic way to look at that. Now, another way would to go further, right? So we're talking about knowledge that we access, for example, inside of an agent that would be HR support or sales support as an example. What about like going to the next level, right? Like let's go interactive here, because these agents allow for us not only just to chat, but to do things as well with that chat. So an example would be if I want to do like, for example, maybe a credit and collections inquiry. We can see I've got another agent that's inside of here. That's my credit and collections agent. And so what I can do is I can say hello to this agent. We'll just do that to get it kind of primed and see if it's going to respond to us. How can I help you here today? I'd like to pull the aging for Contoso retail, right? So once again, now what are we doing? Now we're not doing something where we're asking, for example, documentation-centric information, such as a PDF file. Instead, we're grabbing information from a business system. In this example, Dynamics 365 Finance. And in there, we're going to the Cust Age Balances table. And then basically in the prompt, we told it to return the information that was the aging and pretend like you're a credit and collections agent and identify, for example, the largest outstanding balances that are related to it. So this is an example then of a real use case that sales team members can use quite often to basically then interact with that particular agent. Now, the cool thing about this is that agents aren't just a one way, they can be also content generation that we talk about. Can you create an email for me for the 30-day balance for collections, please? So in this example, what I'm doing is I'm using natural language to then go down a topic path that it'll basically say, okay, Scott's requesting this customer, the 30-day balances. Let's identify all the invoices that are inside of that 30-day balance, and let's create an email for him so that way it shows up in his inbox so that he can then choose what to do with that particular content, right? And so what we'll see here in just a second is that it said it generated it. And what I should see at some point is an email that gets created. And if I look at that email, now I have this wonderful friendly payment reminder that has that balance of 321.75 and also even attach that overdue invoice that I can reference that has the information that's related to it. So this is an example then of actually using agents to then integrate with email to go faster, to generate content, and basically then interact with it. And I want to stop at one more before we get a little bit more advanced as well. And that is the fact that agents don't have to start, for example, inside of a chat experience. One way to do this might be, for example, in agriculture, if I go ahead and I email, for example, Scott Frappier, and I say I'd like a quote and would draft with Copilot here, I could say, I'd like to get a quote for bushels of corn, please, right? As something like that. And we'll use Copilot to even generate the email that's related to it. So the cool thing about this is that we can center, for example, on content that we can actually go through and then create inside of Outlook. So if you are a salesperson or you're a manufacturing team member and you want to create an order, for example, what I can do is I can send that along as an example. And then what I can do is I can wait for the system to go through and then come back with, for example, that content based upon what the email had. And this is that abstraction that I talked about a little bit earlier, where we back off, for example, from the capabilities that are inside of the business system. Now I can log into the business system, but instead what I can do here is I can get, for example, some of that corn detail, and then I could reply to it and say, make it so, right? Or something like that. And then what will happen here is it will actually go through then and then take that content and that quote information and then generate, for example, a purchase contract inside of the business system. So now what we're doing is we're basically going through and using Copilot to do the data entry inside of a business system. So as you can see here, we have a purchase contract that was generated with those 5,000 bushels at that price when we said make it so, and you can see the content that was generated off of that as well. These candidly, like when I created this took me an hour to create. Now I get it. There's going to be more and deeper capabilities and exception processing because it's an oversimplification to say it's just going to take you an hour to create a simple process. But I am going to say trying to do this in code, like in X++ or AL or C Sharp or Visual Basic, it would take me days because you got to define the template, you got to define the control, you got to create an MFC app or you MVVC, you've got to use the different programming paradigms, right? You have to build that application to drive it. So once again, you need to think through the efficiency gain that you get as well by being able to use these Copilot agents to go faster in your organization and to use natural language to really drive that. Now, with that, I know we don't have an eternity of time, and I really wish we did. So what I want to do here is I actually want to bring someone on stream here today that I'd love to give an introduction to. So with that, I know Bree is going to somehow magically pop her up on here. So if you can make that happen, There she is. And Anna, I see you were on mute and now you're not, so that's perfect too. Perfect. So, we always talk about these flight labs, and this guy named Scott Frappier talks the entire time. And I think that monotony can get a little bit annoying. So, what I wanted to do is show one of our team members, have her do an introduction as well, and really show what she has created as an example of what you can do inside of Copilot Studio to go further. And the cool thing about this is that the capabilities that we're going to show here are something that are not geared around a technical, for example, coder to create. It's more around, for example, an IT manager or somebody that knows, for example, these different types of technologies that we can drive. So with that, Anna, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself and your background? And let's dig in here in Flight Lab. This should be kind of fun.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working in industry not as long as Scott, but long enough, more than 20 years, on and off with different ERP systems and different customer requirements. And I do enjoy working with people who are able to share technical requirements with me. So they're technically savvy enough to translate all the words that user throws on them into some technical requirements. And I think that actually if you're able to create Power Automate, or you can translate from the user language to the technical language, Copilot is just right for you. So without further ado, let's jump into the session and have a look how that is going. So here you see my order hound. He's nice doggy, but he makes oopsies sometimes about what he says in there. So this agent is actually a customer portal idea. What I mean by this, we all have customers who want to know the situations with their orders. What do you have for sale? Is there something shipped? Can I match my table with the chair and so on? So let's start a new chat. How it's built, I have my playground, which is a business central. You can connect to any system. It's just done through the API, and just drop the topics, drop the API information inside the agent, build whatever you need with a similar to Power Automate options, and here we go. So it connected, it said to me, hello and such. It sniffed out the token because I asked it to, and now it asks me for my corporation. So I will give it a datum. Now what it will try to do, it will try inside to find if this customer is actually there, and it is there. So what do you want to fetch? Okay, show me my sales orders, please. Now what it should do, it just creates an API request to the Business Central to see what orders this datum has and show me what it has. And my datum has a lot of orders. Let's verify that. So I go to my Business Central, and again, it can be any system that you have that enables APIs. Okay, I hear. Now I'm being a very funky customer, and I don't remember my order, so I will ask it, did I order any lamps? So I'm not going through every single order. I trained my agent to go through the sales order lines and see if there is any lamps. And the thing here that you can ask questions in a plain language, which I like very much. Or I can do something like, did I order any blue chairs? So it's going to see if there is any chairs in my particular sales orders. Then my idea is, if I have blue chairs, maybe I want to ask it for the blue table, and we see if it will comply with that. Okay, so it says to me, yes, you ordered blue chairs, 1 unit actually. Do you have any furniture. I cannot talk today. Please group by color. So now it makes another request for all the item it has and inventory levels. And it will try to apply my question to whatever answer it has. Okay, so yeah, it has blue chairs, it has yellow, black, and such. And it has other not specified colors. Now I can ask any question about items for sales. I can ask, do you have any food for sale? Because Kronos is a very interesting company. They sell furniture and beans. So got items, formatting my answer. No food, because it doesn't consider beans as food, which kind of makes sense. You can only drink it, not eat it. Well, someone can try probably, and so on. Now, this is a live living system. So I can go to my system and say I want to create a new item.
And while you're doing that, I want to make one comment, Anna. If you haven't noticed it on stream, what's so profound is that every scenario that you're kind of going through here, you didn't have to make independent code changes for it. It all went down, like, for example, the get sales order lines or the get items topic paths, and then it used the prompt information to try to accomplish the goal that was being specified. So I think that just is really cool here because it just, yeah, as a developer, if you think about it, trying to encompass every single scenario is nearly impossible, but making it so that it can act intelligently to then do grouping or to then get items is pretty amazing.
Okay, so I created 2 additional items, chocolate and cookies. What can we do better? So now it tries to fetch new products. And it found me chocolate and cookies, and now it decided to include the beans because I asked it to include items without inventory. Maybe there is something. So that's live living thing, and it's all. Let's see. What else I have prepared? I can ask it, because I forgot, what is my sales order number for the blue chip? So again, so many questions to the same topic. And Copilot is intelligent enough to orchestrate those things where you should go. And the topics I will show you, the topics are rather simple. With the generative AI possibilities inside Copilot, you don't need to create all those phrases to get inside and such. Okay, so it showed me the sales order number. So let's go and print sales order for me. There are some limitations with the Copilot. As for now, it cannot print you the sales order. It cannot create the PDF or attachment. We can go around it by summarizing. Okay, yes, please summarize me this sales order. What it's doing inside. Again, there is 2 different API calls. One goes to get the header of the sales order. Another one goes to get the sales line. And then it combines it together just by summarizing. So there is a generative AI portion of it that gets 2 data sets and summarize them. And here we go. We have my sales order, the order date, shipment date, draft, and so on. There are some limitations to it, depending on how much data you have for a special request. So my items are relatively small number of them. So the Copilot still can work with them because we have this token limitation on how much we can use with every topic. We can go around it. And for another customer, I created another type of agent, which is called order hound with files. If you have too much items and you don't want to go through all of them and you cannot do the API call, it will tell you too much data, I'm failed, and use another model because you're running out of tokens, you can create a file on the SharePoint and on a regular basis export the items you have into the file indexed, and your customers will see the same information you do in the system. Unfortunately, that is not real life situation. It takes a couple of minutes to go and update the file. Then Copilot needs to reindex the file. But it's good enough, and I think I made it until like 2 or 3 minutes, which is quite okay. So this is a way to go around with the limitation of the files. Yeah. Oh, I didn't show that it can also get my corporation user data. And also I want to see what am I unpaying. Invoices. The idea behind the customer portal is also you have a controller, you have financial team. They need to go in the system and enter in the documents or answering the questions precisely is easier for them because they know the system well and they want to know the system well and they can answer any questions on the system very fast. There are a number of users who don't know the system and frankly they don't care about the system and how to interact with that, and you don't want them to know what system you are using. So you want large language model to connect to system and being able to answer the questions from the customer, right? Or executive team. They do need information, they do need authorization regarding the Copilot, but they still want to ask a plain language question like, I know, what is our AR spent in October and what was the budget? You can do that with a Copilot single API call to get the action, to get the information from the chart of accounts, to get the information from the jail budget and show that to them executive team. There was one question about the authorization, and I wanted to show one thing. You can do knowledge as a file inside the Copilot, and then this file would be visible for everyone who is using this Copilot. You can do a knowledge source at the SharePoint, and then the user that interacts with the Copilot will only be able to see the files that he has permissions to. On top of that, every Copilot has additional settings of the authorization. And then you can define if there is a need of no authentication. For example, for the customer portal, you want to handle it inside to ask them for the password and go with it, or that is just general information what you have in inventory, then you don't need any authentication in there. You can authenticate with Microsoft, then it would be for the internal use or something like that, or authenticate manually for those specific situations. When, for example, if someone random logs in the customer portal and just asks about the inventory, what is possible, what is there for sale, then it's all good. Once he hit the point when he needs to know sales invoices or sales order, you go with authentication for the additional topic management. Or for some internal things to create I don't know, the agent which Scott showed with the HR to create a request to HR, then you need to authenticate that this really the person who actually wants to create this action, if that makes sense. Yep. All right. That was it from my side. In case someone has any questions, go ahead.
Yeah, and I've got some questions for you, of course, right away here, right? So the first question I have, Anna, like, how long did it take you to really start to create this? I mean, like, if you think about your learning journey here, when you first joined with Stone Ridge, you didn't obviously know Copilot Studio in depth, and technically Business Central, if you think about it, we do a lot of our active development and changes and customization inside of AL, which is an entirely different language. I guess the question I have is how hard was it for you to kind of ramp up with Copilot, and how much time do you think you've spent, just honestly for the audience here, to start understanding how to create something like this?
It was not too much time. Coming to Stone Ridge, I didn't know anything about ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever. Somehow this topic went past through me, and I was very curious of what it can do. The new thing about the Power Automate, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool, and you can do so much stuff with it. It took a bit as a developer to switch the mind from the thing that you can do in AL to the blocks inside Copilot. So this is a specific set of mind you need to reach. But once you are there, it's all good. For this Copilot, for the AutoHound, I didn't use any AL programming at all. You can do it all by yourself without interactions with the developer. The idea, like you have a Copilot license, you have Business Central or FNO, and you can reach one and another one, you are good to go. In the Business Central here, I'm using standard APIs provided by Microsoft. So nothing too much in depth in AL at all.
That's pretty cool. So, and that's what I like to just kind of highlight here is that either if you're a developer and you want to start using Copilot Studio, you can make that transition and you can create some really cool things really quickly. Or if you're not a developer, you don't need to know code to be able to design these. Now, mind you, I'm assuming here on a, like, if you think about like design patterns, like, topics and how to reuse topics, kind of like what we would call object inheritance, right? Inside of programming languages. Like you need to think a little bit through that. But overall, though, this allows you, as you're kind of showing with these topics, you're basically just using formulas, right? Like Excel-based formulas as well for a lot of these interactions. Is that an example then? Is that valid?
Yeah, that is totally correct. Let's go to the one of the topic, for example, get sales orders. At the point when I want someone to see what sales orders they use, I have the trigger, then I'm setting the variable to remember what actual question the customer asked. And then I need to check, do we have the customer ID at this point already? Maybe we didn't fetch it. If we didn't fetch it, then we go to the another topic, and this is the block. So if you're a developer, you can think of it as a function. So this is another topic, view customer ID. So then it goes and get the customer ID. Did we get the customer ID? Yes, good. Then get the token. Do we need a token? Yes, we need a token. It expired, so go and get a token. We have the token. It's not expired yet. All good. We go to go. Now make me a call for the API request for the get sales orders and provided all information to the generative AI to fetch the answer and then end the current token. So then in the topics, we can define if the topic can be used on its own or it's solely topic for the internal purposes. Like I cannot imagine customer going and asking about my ID. So I can go ahead and say that this topic is always triggered by other topics and so on. So the reuse is totally there. What you can also do, you can do agent on agent. So let's say you have some bigger internal agent that can answer not only you want some bigger agent that you can not only answer the sales questions, but also the purchase question. Then you can connect your agent with this purchase agent and give the Copilot ability to orchestrate both of them. What Copilot then will do, it will define your question to what agent that should be added to, and it will orchestrate its way through it.
Yeah, that's great. So we did get a question here on it that I want to make sure we answer to. So, Thomas, really appreciate you being on the stream here. Are there some specific learning sources you might recommend for someone that has D365 CE and BC that you have found helpful when making the transaction to or transition to learning Copilot Studio? Do you have anything that you would recommend for that, Anna?
I think, Thomas, you mentioned already that you have an ability to do the Power Automate. That will help here a lot. because you can do the flows as well. I can send, if you will provide me your email, I can send you a couple of links I used to. One thing I then want to mention, in agent you can use the flows as well. So the agent topic itself, when you do the flow in it, looks a lot like Power Automate. On top of that, you can also create a flow inside Power Automate and connect it to your agent. For example, I'm using, as you see, a lot of Power Automate, even though it's kind of embedded in the agent. When you log in inside, you see that it's all the same as a Power Automate. And I'm more than happy to send all the resources I shared. If anyone else needs it, please go ahead and just text in the chat.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So Thomas, I saw Bree got you as well there, so we'll make sure we get you that info. High level two, go to copilotstudio.microsoft.com and go to the very bottom. There's actually a free Copilot Studio workshop and some getting started areas that I've used in the past when I started on this journey, along with some additional documentation. But we'll get you in contact, obvious, with Anna as we go through this as well. So awesome. Well, Anna, I think we're at time here. I really appreciate you coming on stream here to show this. It just once again shows that this is not just something that one of us know. It's something that many people are kind of building out. And I think that this app that you've created or this agent, it's really powerful, right? Like you can in the future here, maybe we need a purchasing agent, for example, to answer questions about delayed purchase orders and things of that nature. So it just looks like the sky's the limit, I guess, when it comes to it. And so thank you very much for sharing this with us today.
You're very welcome. Hope to talk to you soon again.
Awesome. And with that, team, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the Flight Lab for today. Remember, keep checking on the LinkedIn page for the schedule with it. We'll obviously be having some future sessions here as well as we go more and deeper into Copilot. And quite candidly, I think coming up here for 2026, we're going to have a lot more content to kind of dig into. So as we get more of that, we'll make sure we bring that into Flight Lab to experiment with, to have some fun with, and then to really identify how you can use these Copilot agents to really drive your business forward.